Hey guys, it's Antonio, and thank you for coming back to our Washington Church of Christ YouTube page. I'm really sorry it's been pretty quiet the last few weeks. It's been pretty busy here on my end with a couple things going on, job-wise. I just really seriously have not had much time. Those things are going to be continuing for about the next 2 weeks, so it's going to be a little quiet again, but I'm hoping to get as many videos out as I possibly can, probably during the weekends. So we're going to continue with our Hebrews 11 study. We're probably about halfway there, so we're making progress. And that's definitely encouraging. Today we're going to be talking about Abraham once again. He's mentioned a few times in this chapter, and in Hebrews chapter 11, beginning in verse 17, it reads, "By faith Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, 'Through Isaac shall your offspring be named.' He considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back." This story of Abraham and Isaac is one of my favorites, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's also incredibly encouraging to read about Abraham in this story, but also Isaac as well. The faith that not only Abraham displayed, but Isaac displayed as well. They both, starting with Abraham, God told Abraham to, on this day you're going to get up and you're going to go to a place that I will show you. So he went and did it the next day. Abraham didn't know where he was going. He was told, "I will show you to the mount that I will bring you to." And so he went, not knowing where he was going, brought all the supplies. Something interesting that also happens in that story is Isaac even asks his dad, Abraham, "Where is the lamb? Where is the sheep or the goat that we're going to be offering?" And Abraham just says God will provide, even though Abraham already knew that he was going to be tested to offer up his son, his only son, Isaac. And so this story is incredibly important to us because it shows us that we constantly only see a small picture when God sees the bigger picture. And here's what I mean by that. God promised Abraham and Sarah a son, and that son would become Isaac. But that promise of a son was also, following that promise, was, "Through Isaac shall your offspring be named." And yet, if Isaac was to die, how could he have, the offspring, which would eventually lead to Jesus, go through Isaac? And so we see the bigger picture, that God saw a bigger picture than what Abraham saw and what really Abraham understood. And yet, even in all that, only seeing, that tiny little pixel, really, of this grand picture, Abraham still acted on his faith, knowing that God could provide. And it says in verse 19, he considered that God was able to even raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. As far as I know, there wasn't any sort of resurrection from the dead that Abraham had seen, and yet he believed that anything would be possible through God. He believed that after he would have offered his son as a sacrifice, that God could have raised him back from the dead. And while he never had to physically kill his son, in his act of faith, as he was about to kill his son, God sent an angel to stop him, and Abraham, figuratively, as it says in Hebrews, received his son back from the dead, because Isaac was as good as dead. Something also interesting that in this story that isn't mentioned here, and it isn't mentioned about Isaac later on, is that Isaac also had the faith in God to willingly give his life as the sacrifice. Remember, he didn't know where the offering would be. So what would happen is that he would come to find out that he was the offering, he was the sacrifice, and he went through with it, knowing that his life would come to an end. And so I hope, in the grand scheme of all this, in the overall understanding and application, for us today is that sometimes we are called to do things that are extremely difficult. Sometimes we are called to get rid of things we love and are near and dear to our hearts. But in an act of faith to God, we need to give those things up. Also, I think it's incredibly important that we have God at the center of our life, of our focus, and of our being, because that's where Abraham was. Abraham didn't ask, questions to God about the whole situation. He knew that God was in control, and that if he just went with it, went where God was leading him, that he would learn what God had in store for him. So I hope that we can take that lesson for ourselves and to trust in God and to follow him and to do his will. So thank you guys for listening. I hope this was encouraging to you. I know it's very helpful for me reading and studying and then also speaking to you guys about these things. Thank you once again, and please share this video on Facebook, Twitter, do whatever you can. Share it with your friends and family. Get the word of God out there. We know that people are needing it, and we know that people are looking for it. So let's be the light that God calls us to be. Have a great day, guys, and have a happy weekend.